Alrighty, boys. It's time for season 15, and I was like, you know what? Let's make the new rune and build guide, even though I haven't actually played a game yet in season 15. So I'm gonna give my initial thoughts on everything. I'll probably make another updated video on like everything if I do find a new build or rune setup for the season over the next couple of days. Since yeah, the season just dropped. It actually goes live for ranked in a couple hours, so. I was like, I might as well get this video out now so you guys have at least something to get your games based off of when you're going into the new season. So, yeah, let's get right into the runes. For runes, um, the standard Conquer, Triumph, Legend Haste, and Last Stand, I think, are always fine. You can always go Alacrity as well over Legend Haste if you prefer it. I am personally more of a fan still of Haste, just because there's not a ton of Haste in the game these days. So I like the Legend Haste. But you can go Alacrity, they're both fine. But Conquer is still by far the best keystone. Um, there's always been arguments to like try to go PTA on Kled into like very squishy comps, which I don't think it's like horrendous in those situations. But for the most part, Conquer's always gonna outscale PTA, and even early game, it still doesn't really make much of a difference going PTA compared to Conquer, since you're probably not gonna be staying in fights too long early on. It's just gonna be shorter trades anyways. Or not, or well, I mean, I guess I don't know. It depends, but like the damage diff once you hit like level 6+ is very minimal. So unless you're like getting like cheese skills like pre-6 with PTA, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So I think Conquer's better, but it's more preference. Now moving on to the secondary runes. This is where I'm not like 100% sure what the best is. I'm thinking this new Axiom rune seems pretty good because it ups your damage and shielding from your ult, which is pretty nice since obviously your adult does a ton of damage and has a pretty big shield. So, and it also reduces your ult's cooldown by 7% as well. So it's like a mini Axiom Mark proc for free. So it seems pretty good. I'm definitely gonna have to try it out today and see how it feels even more. But it seems like it must be like at least like a solid option on Kled. Especially with the lethality builds, if you do go lethality, which I'll be talking about in a second. But yeah, it seems pretty good. So I'm thinking Axiom with either Transcendence or Gathering. I feel like Transcendence might be better, just because I don't know how long the games are gonna last. If you feel like the games are gonna last super long, I think Gathering's fine over Transcendence if you're gonna go to this rune. But I think it's just more preference. And if you want to play Kled mid and you wanted to still go to this Axiom rune, you could either do it with Transcendence or you could even do it with Water Walking, because Water Walking is always like a solid option as well, since we're actually going back to the Sorcerer Tree even more than we used to. But the other option is obviously like the standard like Demolish with like Second Wind. This has always been fine and solid, especially into like poke matchups or just tank matchups where you're not going to be interacting too much. You'd rather just play for platings and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's fine to do that as well. I used to do this page a little bit in Kled mid, but I'm not like a huge fan of it anymore since I don't really run Ignite ever, and I only really took it because of the Ignite CD. So I don't think this page is that good. And then they added these like new ward runes, which I don't think are very useful in Kled at all, since you don't really care about vision as much, right? And just in general, the domination tree isn't that great anymore. So I'm thinking the Axiom rune seems pretty good. So I'm probably going to be doing this with either Transcendence or Gathering. I'm probably going to mix between the two. But yeah, it looks pretty solid. And then for the mini trees, this is pretty much just preference. But I will say going base like the 65 base health over the scaling health feels better for Kled usually, just because you want to get that early health for the prio and land. But obviously, if they have a lot of CC, you can go tenacity. But yeah, for this, you can either go double adaptive or you can go one attack speed. It doesn't really matter. More preference. But yeah, now let's get into the build. So I always just put up these starting items. Oh, I should probably put marks in here too, actually. Just because for boots, this season now that there's those boot upgrade things, which let me pull these up actually. Like, where are they? They're all here. When your team like gets ahead or whatever now, there's these boot upgrades. So honestly, Tabby is look really broken. So if there's ever like a very heavy AD comp you're against or auto attack based comp, and your team is getting the objectives needed for these boots, I think you pretty much are forced into going tabbies now because of how broken these boots are. Same with potentially even going Mercs. Swifties even look pretty decent. Like I think they all look fine. Like same with Baron boots, but in the right scenarios, I think the tabby boots are probably the best boots in the game. The Mercs ones are decent as well though, but yeah, you just gotta be very flexible with your boots. I think this season because of the upgrades and stuff. And then obviously like starting items are usually just preference. I usually will go D-Blade most games, but into poke matchups I'll go D-Shield. You can sometimes get away with greeting with longsword refill or longsword 3-pot, but I don't think it's as worth it in a lot of scenarios just because D-Blade literally gives the same AD as longsword with extra stats, and then it just gives you more like laning power, but I think it comes down to more preference, honestly. So yeah. Now going into the build, my lethality build is still probably going to be the main build I'm going to going for into this season, just because they didn't actually change many items at all. They only changed a couple tank items, which one of them will be coming into one of the builds after that I've been testing out. But for the most part, I think lethality will probably still be your go-to in a lot of scenarios because it's still probably going to be a pretty high damage meta, and I just feel like lethality, especially with that new Axiom rune, just seems really insane. In the right scenarios. So yeah, I think lethality is still gonna be the best. Which for first item, I usually either go Hubris or Voltaic. I usually go Hubris just into like normal matchups where I can like stick on them and snowball pretty easily, and then into range matchups or just very slippery matchups, I like going Voltaic Rush. You can always like just build the two together as well, like build one and then the other. I think that's fine. Just more preference. For their pen item, I think it's always usually just going to be LDR still. Unless, like, obviously they have, like, 4 healing champs or something and your team is just refusing to build heal cut. Then there's a small argument to do Mortal Reminder, but I swear that item is just super trash. It's way too expensive. It costs an extra 200 gold. You get less pen, just less stats overall. And it just feels really bad to build. So I think LDR is still by far the best pen item. Even when you're going, like, the other, like, type of builds, like Bruiser builds or even a tankier build, I just think LDR is by far the best pen item for Kled, so I'd recommend going that most games. For the rest of these lethality items, I'm not sure why I have Maw on here, actually, I just realized. But for the other lethality items, I think it just comes down to preference. You can go whatever you want. I really like Axiom a lot. This feels like a really good item. Yomu's is also solid. Serpents in the right games is very, very strong as well, right? But yeah, honestly, once you get past your like first like couple items, because usually you want to always get like your pet item by like your third item, sometimes even second item, but usually third. Afterwards, it's just more situational depending on the game. Like you can even build items like opportunity if you really wanted to, or even there's like a small argument for Edge of Night. I'm not a big fan of Edge of Night, but like I guess I could always store it in there as well as an item option. I will say though, you could probably notice I don't have a Hydra in this build. I think Profane is by far the worst item on Kled. And I don't mean on Kled, just in general in the game, and they've never touched it since they've nerfed it. So I don't think it's really worth it to build that item. And just in general, I'm not like a huge fan still of Hydras unless I'm going like a tankier option, which is where I'll go something like a Ravenous or Titanic. But with lethality, if I'm gonna commit to a full lethality build, unless I'm against like a tank matchup and I absolutely need like sustain first item for Ravenous, I usually just opt into like not building a Hydra at all. But I mean, there's always the argument that you could even just rush a team mat at some point and just sit on it and not even like finish it. But I don't think you need team mat items right now with how like they are, so I don't go with the lethality build. But yeah. Now moving on to the split Bruiser option, which is a build I was testing a bit a couple weeks ago. I think honestly for the split Bruiser option, you can go either Titanic or Ravenous with it. I think they're both fine. It's just more preference. So honestly, I'll throw Ravenous in there as an option as well. But yeah, I think both are fine. But this is actually one of the builds where you will build a Hydra early on with Hullbreaker as your second item. You probably like be more flexible too sometimes, and like even throw in like an Eclipse before, or like a different like pet item before. Which I don't know why I don't even have Eclipse in this item set. Item set's so scuffed for some reason. But um, yeah, I think Titanic or Rav are both fine with this specific build, just because you're playing for the wave clear and playing for the Hullbreaker spell push potential. The one downside to this build is you are way less like threatening in terms of damage output onto carries, so you're pretty much forced into playing through sides the whole game, unless obviously like it gets to the point where they're just sending 4 or 5 people on you constantly, and your team can't really do much. Then you're in a kind of an awkward situation. But if you can get ahead and snowball and get like tier 2s really early on with this setup, you can take over games, and it's not bad. You can even opt into going more damagey afterwards too. Instead of going cleaver, like you could go in LDR, but it's just more preference, honestly. And I think it's an okay build, but as I mentioned before, I think Lethality is still slightly better than this setup in a lot of scenarios. But in the right like scenarios where they don't have a ton of like damage to like just like shred through you, and you could just be really annoying in the side lane, potentially against like a tank matchup or something, I think it can be fine. Now moving on to the build I was testing out a lot recently, the tank build, or the semi-tank, whatever you want to call this build. Which is pretty much like a shielding and healing build. Uh, I have Titanic here as an option for it, but usually I'll go Ravenous with this setup. But yeah, what I was doing was I was doing a lot of like Eclipse into Ravenous, and then third item, if I needed the pen right away, I would go LDR. Otherwise, I would go into Unending Despair. They did actually change Unending this patch, where it doesn't give as much armor anymore, but now it gives some MLR as well. And they also nerfed the actual damage proc on it by a little bit, but they also make it proc a second quicker. So I'm not like 100% sure on how good this item's gonna be. I'll have to test it out in like some games at times when I think it's okay to build. Because I don't think this build is a build that you would go every game. It's gonna be in games as well where like you have a ton of damage already on your team comp or in your team comp, and they kind of just need a frontliner or just someone to be annoying while they can just completely pop off and scale, right? So, in the right scenarios, I think a build like this can be solid, because then you just become really, really tanky and annoying, and at times you could still 1v1 people, but obviously you're not going to be able to like 1v5 them unless you're like giga fed. But a build like this where you go like kind of these items in order, except maybe putting LDR there, I think a build like this can be fine. You can always like interchange some items. Like if you're snowballing really hard early and you still want to go beefy, you could even opt into going like a Hubris instead of Eclipse. Um, but it's more preference. But yeah, it's not bad. I think it's an okay option in the right scenarios. So yeah. And then wait, damage sustain. Oh, I guess this is like more for like against tankier matchups. Like I should put Hubris in here. You would either go Hubris or you would go no, wait, it's the wrong Hubris. You either go Hubris or Voltaic again, depending on the matchup. And then yeah, you can go Ravenous with it and just be really annoying. I might even just take out this part though. I mean, I guess I'll keep it, but yeah, it's pretty much the same as the lethality build from earlier. And then this is just another item set of like Bruiser items. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the builds and runes. For at least what I was running, and like I think it's gonna be okay going into the season. Like obviously you probably could like be creative with some items and try to like find something that works for you, and I think it can be okay. But in my personal opinion, I think the lethality build is still the best build. And then for the runes, I think that Axiom rune should be pretty good, but I'm not 100% sure still, right? I'm gonna have to test it out a bit today, which I'll be live on my Twitch for the season. So if you guys want to come stop by and say hello and see what I'm up to, you definitely can. But yeah, I appreciate you guys watching, and good luck in your season 15 climb, guys. I'll see you guys later.